Welcome back to the program. Now, as the third quarter formally ends on Monday, let's discuss the outlook for the market in the final quarter of the year. Joining to chat to this is Channel's business editor, Bosino Mafwai. Thank you for coming on.
My pleasure.
Can you give us a quick outlook, for the market year to date?
I think we've done fairly well. It's been a highly political environment for the year. Remember the elections and all the intrigues around the elections. It was a peaceful elections, but again, the outlook on whether the cabinet will come in on time and all of that, that took a bit away from our first quarter, second quarter. But again, if you look at the global space, the rhetorics around the trade war between the US and China took a lot of attention away from the equities market. So investors largely played more of the fixed income market, treasury bills and bonds for the early part of the year. Our anticipation again as we got MTN and Airtel listing around April, May and June. That sort of gave investors in the equity space a bit of some confidence as to where we're going. But again, there was so much of this political overhang in terms of where is the cabinet, what will be the nature of the cabinet. The executive branch was largely silent. So to a large extent, folks were largely waiting. What will be the nature of the cabinet and all of that. Then with half year, then there was no cabinet in place. Then folks were asking the question, what's going on at the fiscal space? Meantime, the central bank was trying to wrap its head around using monetary policy tools to deal with whether it is palm oil or it is imported milk or it's going to be about giving more loans to SMEs and what have you. And all of that kept the markets on edge. And the central bank kept trying to do some of what the fiscal authorities should be doing. Then we'll get into July, August, then we'll have a cabinet in place. Everybody took a bit of a breather. So if you look at the stock market or the equity side, you've seen a bit of a better sentiment since we had a cabinet in place. There's more clarity on the political space that we have a cabinet and we know who these gentlemen are and women and who will be coming in and who will be going. Some critical ministers retain their portfolio, like works, finance and aviation, which is critical to road, rail, the Belt and Road Initiative that the Nigerian authorities are doing. So that's largely what it was. Then again, the calendar from the debt management office in terms of borrowings via debt was okay. The head of the debt management office made it clear Nigeria will not be doing any Eurobond this year. We'll just do a multilateral borrowing, and we're discussing $2.5 billion with the World Bank. On the side of the central bank is trying to maintain liquidity, try to rein in inflation, and we've seen a bit of a result of that over a 3-month period, July and August. Yeah. So we hope that all this will continue, and all of these are all in attempt to see that, look, we have a bit of a soft landing at the end of the year.
Okay, so with all of this in place and all that we've seen, in the economy from the first, second, and third quarter, what is your outlook for the fourth quarter?
I think as a business journalist, and I think my outlook is that we're getting into the period when folks will start taking some profit. But again, we're not ruling out the fact that you can still see a major rebound, investors very sentiment strong in October and November before folks start selling down and wrapping up for the year. So, but again, you need to look at what will be the headline news and what to focus on. The last MPC for the year will be critical. The central bank governor has indicated, however, in an interview with Bloomberg earlier this week, there will be no interest rate cut until inflation gets down to 9%. So we can kiss that goodbye for the rest of the year. But what will be the sentiment of the MPC when they meet finally for the year? Will there be some statements that the central bank will make without touching the monetary policy rate? That will be very key. What will be the rest of the calendar for the debt management office in terms of the borrowings from both locally and internationally? Will be on the lookout for that as well. In particular, again, for investors will be the earnings. You said earlier on the show that GT Bank gave notice that the board of directors will meet later in October to consider third quarter numbers. As soon as those numbers start coming in, investors will price in those earnings. And if they look good for the banks, consumer goods, industrial goods, maybe the insurance and oil and gas, then we could say, and of course MTN and Airtel, by the way. If those numbers come in good, Dangote Cement, maybe Lafarge and others, then we can say, oh, fine, it's been nice. Investors will price those good earnings. which is 9 months into the numbers. And that could give the equity side a bit of a decent finishing for the year. Not that we're likely going to make a fantastic ending, but we'll just finish off very nicely. On the debt side, the new yield curve, like you put it, it looks like that's the new reality, between 13.5, 14%. We're likely going to end the year around that corridor until we have more clarity on budget 2020, which will be very, very critical for those who are traders and dealers in the debt market.
Okay, thank you, Bosun. So you've given us your outlook for the fourth quarter.
That looks a bit of my playbook.
So talking about next week now, what do you see happening, in the financial space, in the markets next week?
Next week is Independence Day will be in everybody's crosshairs from, as usual, we love our holidays. So expect Monday folks to close a little bit early, try to enjoy a bit of the Tuesday, then come back to work on Wednesday. Of course, it's going to be very busy. You find the cabinet meeting will be on Wednesday. We expect that to happen. President Buhari will be back in office on Monday. And by Wednesday, we'll be sitting with the cabinet. Everyone will want to know what he's back with from the UN General Assembly. How do we move forward on that? There'll be issues around the ease of doing business, the ranking we got on Friday. Will there be a talking point on that as well? What will be the 411? But again, a few issues the market would have to deal with. The removal of the IST Securities Tribunal chairman and an appointment of new one. I'm sure the traders and dealers on Monday will start wrapping their head on what actually happened to Isiaka Idoko. Why was he removed from office? Of course, the government provides a continuity, so there's no lacuna, as it were. But there are a lot of cases pending before the Investment and Securities Tribunal, which needs adjudication and resolution. So, but continuity is also already there. So I'm sure everyone will move on that in the start. But the clarity with the MTEF, with the FSP, and the budget 2020 will be something everybody on the market street would want to have more clarity about, especially from the National Assembly. The executive has thrown the gauntlet there. We'll see what happens at the National Assembly as per the discussions around MTEF and the fiscal strategy paper.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bosun, for sharing your thoughts with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So, well, thank you for joining us on the program. That's it for today. See you next week. I'm Edidiong Iwang.